What is up, everyone? Chris Roma here, aka Roma Aquatics. Today's episode is going to be about water. How to make good water, how to start with good water, how to get it in and out of your tanks easily so that we have good water. Easy top-offs, easy water changes. Starting with good water is one of the keys to success. So let's get started. First of all, it starts with a good water source. So I use tap water. Luckily my tap water comes out of the tap at about 100 TDS. And then you gotta have your reverse osmosis system. So my system starts with a sediment filter, and then I have a 1 micron carbon block, and from there it goes into a dual reverse osmosis membranes that are hooked up in parallel, so it saves water versus reducing the TDS and then reducing the TDS again. So if you hooked them up in parallel, if you had really bad, like say you had like 700 TDS out of the tap, you'd probably still have about 30 TDS coming out of your first membrane if it has like a 2 to 4% rejection rate. So don't mind if you hear any kids yelling in the background. We are quarantined and they are home with me at the moment, so just don't mind if you hear that. But anyways, back to this, you'd have like a 30% or 30 TDS rejection. So if you hooked them up in parallel, you could get that back down to pretty much 1 TDS if you run these in parallel. But since I have good water to begin with, I'm only at 100. The rejection rate out of here is about 2 TDS. So I run them in parallel, I still get 2 TDS, and I get twice the amount of water in the same amount of time, or half the amount of time and same amount of water, however you want to look at it. But anyway, from then it goes up to my resin. So I have a cation, a anion, and the mixed bed resins. When I originally bought it, this was the sediment filter and then 2 carbon blocks, but since my water is so clean out of the tap, I felt that it was more useful running 3 resins versus 1 resin and 2 carbon blocks. So it starts with that. So what I do is first I'll run my water. I have my TDS meter here, and basically the TDS measures the water as it comes in to the system right after the sediment filter is the first measurement, and then it measures it after the carbon block before the RO membranes, and then it measures it after the RO membranes, and it measures the output after all of that. So what I do first is I run my water, because it tends to be about 150 TDS, 130, 150 TDS when it's been sitting. So I'll let that run until I could feel it cold here, and then once it's cold here, I'll go ahead and I'll turn on my system, and this is what feeds water directly from the tap to the system. And then I'll turn off my tap, and you'll see the pressure went up to about, is going to stabilize at about 60, a little above 60. And now you can see I have it goes through the sediment, the carbon, and then I have it split off, it goes through the sediment, the carbon, and the reverse osmosis filters. And then before the DI resin, I have it split to this hose, which I can fill drinking water or just drain down the drain. And then it also goes up and through the resin and then out. And my wastewater line comes down through here. Here's the flush valve. You always want to flush to save your resin. And you'll see that in a minute, how the TDS goes up. If you don't flush, you're sending a lot of TDS to your resin that you wouldn't need to. But basically my wastewater used to drain into here, but since I've plumbed it into the pond, so it's actually plumbed into that float valve right there. And we'll take a closer look at that in a second when we turn the water on. And then, so this pond basically gets auto changed with the wastewater from the water, or the roadie. So we are here at the pond in my crawl space, is where I basically just throw all of my overgrown plants that I don't know what to do with, that I pull out of my other tanks. And this gets filled with wastewater, and it has an overflow that basically comes out, goes down here, and goes to a drain in the floor right there, which goes to my sump pump. So it automatically fills and automatically overflows out. So basically gets automatic water changes for the plants based with all the waste roadie water. I do plan to throw a couple more air filters in here because there's my Alita pump that's powering everything basically, and that powers the whole shrimp room. But I'll throw a couple more pumps on here because that's got plenty more power. And as you can see, I've been throwing lots of that dead shrimp powder in here. Tons of Kleb, and that is shrimp food heaven. So there's definitely hair algae in here too, but a lot of Kleb too, which is like the gorgeous, great for shrimp food. So I'm gonna get in here and clean up this pond, and maybe we'll throw some shrimp in here, some Neos, see how they do, because this does go through, if you look through the crack over there, it does go through those two filters first. It goes through the sediment filter and the carbon filter. So it should remove all, if majority, if not all, of the chlorine. So it should still be good for Neos. Fingers crossed. We'll see. So that's the plans for this pond. Get it ready. So let's go ahead. If I flip this switch, it'll let the water start flowing, and then I'll close it again. And now we got wastewater flowing in the pond. So we're filling it up there. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to check our TDS, and we're going to watch this until it gets around 100. Can we see? Can you see? There we go. It's at 114, 113, 112, 111, 110. You get the picture. So that's the input water. That's the water coming in from the tap. And you can see it's dropping as it's running. That's why I like to flush a lot of it out. So it'll stay at around between 90 and 100 generally. But if I go to the output, that's what the output is after the carbon filter right now. So I usually will wait until this gets to around 100 as well. And once the output pretty much matches the input here, that's when I'll go ahead and I'll close off my flush valve here. And what that does is it triggers to pressurize the RO membranes. And now what we're doing is, since I have my resin still closed off, and I can open this up again, and right there, now we're draining. And now what we're doing is we're flushing these membranes, because as you can see here, the output of the membrane, if we could get some light, is still 50 TDS. 49, 50, sorry about the lighting situation. Oh, there we go, I just had to turn a little bit. But as you can see, we're still getting pretty high TDS coming out of that membrane. So I'm draining that water down the drain, otherwise that would be going through my resin. And I definitely do not want that high TDS water going through my resin. It's going to eat it up, eat it up, eat it up. So I know from experience that, like I said earlier, my RO membranes can get it down to about 2 TDS. So I wait until this meter gets to 2 to 3. I'm very impatient, so actually I'll usually flip it at 3 or 4, to be honest, if you want total honesty here. But ideally I'd wait till it gets to 2. But sometimes I wait until like 3, 4, because as it starts getting to the lower numbers, it takes longer and longer to drop that 1 TDS. Probably because of dilution and the way dilution works. But I'm going to go ahead and flip the switch right now, and we can see what happens from there. So now I'm going to open my DI resin and I'm going to close that off. So now as you can see, my resin reservoir is filling up, and I can flip that over. We have 0 TDS coming out, which is ideal. You always want that to be 0, especially with salt water. The shrimp, you don't really need it to be 0, but I still prefer it to be 0. So, all right, on to the next step. So from here, my plumbed line goes to a lot of different places. It gets split off, but I'll show you the first place, which is the auto top off. So, and I normally would pause the camera and we'd skip to the container, but I want to show you, it's upstairs, so it's gravity. So all of my tanks have these, float valves on them, and that's for the water changes and auto top offs, as we'll get into more detail later. But for the auto top off, it's awesome to have it above. Gravity is your friend. So here is my water change, not auto top off, but you can set up an auto top off this way too. So this is a new addition. I'm hoping to get all of my water changes set up in this type of system, so that I don't need a pump to do a water change anymore, which again, we'll see how all that'll make more sense as we watch more of the video. But basically this is the water I use to do water changes on my Neocaridina tanks and my Sulawesi tank. And as you can see, it's the highest tank, it's on the top rack, and gravity is your friend. Once it's above all the other tanks, you no longer need a pump. And as you can see, this float valve right here, this power gets filled up from here, and I could turn that on and off. And then here's a whole system of the same way, and all of this whole hunk ties all into this one line, which comes from the bucket I'm about to show you, which is even higher than this room. It's upstairs, which is awesome, and it's gravity fed, and it's upstairs because then I could get those top row tanks over there. But eventually the goal is to move all the top row tanks to lower somewhere, find other room for the top rows, so that this whole room can be set up where the top rack basically is water change water for that. And then upstairs I have the auto top off water. And the difference between auto top off water and water change water is water change water is the remineralized, it's ready to go, it has your salts and everything in it ready to go. Auto top off water is pure. I'm gonna open this, get some light. Auto top off water is pure, straight from the roadie, 0 TDS water. So this is the first stop from my roadie, and the best part, no pump, water pressure from the roadie, pumped it upstairs, so you don't need any pumps. So this gets full pure roadie water, and then this line goes downstairs to that black line that I just showed you, to that whole series of ball valves that go on and off. Next stop on the list is it gets split to also go to these 2 cans. So right here, this splitter goes to also to the roadie. So the roadie gets split 3 ways ultimately at the end. One going upstairs to the roadie, fresh 0 TDS roadie water that I just showed you that I use for auto top offs. The next stop is this 30-gallon garbage can that I use for my Caridina shrimp. So this is the remineralizer I use. So this gets filled up directly from the roadie via float valves. I can turn it on and off. I have the blue, which goes to the blue can. The black goes to the black can. The black can is my salt water for saltwater tanks. So here's there's my instant ocean remineralizer for that. And here's the remineralizer for my shrimp. But basically, I'll remineralize this, get it to the TDS that I would like, and then close the valve so it doesn't change the water. The TDS stays the same. And then I have this little pump that I use to mix the water. Also, as conveniently, you can plug it into there, and that goes back into the shrimp room. So back over here to this ball valve mess. Like I said, this line comes from the fresh 0 TDS water upstairs and then gets distributed to every single tank in the room. Every tank has a ball valve, floats, press it down, refills like so. Automatic top offs for the whole room, every tank, fresh water. Now, when it comes to water changes, slightly different story. So this rack right here, like I said, this is water change water. So this was filled from the roadie, and then I added salt, and this is ready to go for my Sulawesi and my Neocaridina, which I use the same water just for ease. But that has a drain right here, which connects into the float valve system. And then this line runs back, and it runs and it connects to right here. And this goes to the Sulawesi float valve, and then that connects to the rest of the system. So what I do here is when that's open, you can see there's water flowing for the top off. That's normally open. I closed it off because I was about to do my water change, and then I thought I'd videotape this for you guys. So what I do is I close this off, and what that does is it closes off all this water from the rest of the system. So now my Sulawesi and my Neocaridina are cut off from the system. So I could actually open that up, and now it's completely separate. And what I would do is that pump that I showed you that was mixing my water and has the line that plugs into it, this is the other end of that. So this comes from that pump wherever I want to put that pump. If I put that pump in the saltwater tank, I could connect it to this line right here, which goes to the saltwater tank, and I could do my water changes that way. Or basically whatever the old way I was doing water changes is the way I do water changes for every single tank in this room except for this rack and the Sulawesi tank. Is I basically close the line off, I plug this into whatever line goes to that rack, and then I turn the pump on, and it fills through the lines that are normally used as the auto top off, but then it basically becomes the water change line for a while, and then it'll fill up, as we'll see in a minute, and then I basically switch it back. But we'll get into that. I'll give you an example of how that works. So basically this is disconnected from the system, so there's no way I'm going to actually go ahead and reconnect it because I actually need that closed off. Otherwise this water will just drain out of the end of here. But I'm going to plug that back in. So that's plugged back in, but still closed. So none of this water can get into the auto top off stuff except for where I want it to go. So now, as you can see, this gets forked into there. So now if I opened up this valve, anything that's connected to this line, which is just these 9 tanks and the Sulawesi tank, anything that's connected to that line will be open to this instead of the 0 TDS water. So the next step, and this is the manual part, but it's easy, is you take your trusty hose in your bucket and you start a siphon, and I drain about a gallon of water out of each 10-gallon tank, and then I'll do 5 gallons out of the Sulawesi tank. And normally on Monday I'll do Sulawesi, Tuesday it's this, and then Tuesday, since this doesn't require the pump, Tuesday I can get to do 2 water changes. So Monday I'll basically do 5 gallons into here, and then I'll let this refill. Then I'll remineralize it to where I want it to be, so that Tuesday I could do the water change on these 9 tanks and use the pump line to do a water change on these Caridina tanks. And then on Wednesday, so then I'll let the water refill in my Caridina garbage can over there, the blue can. Well, so then Wednesday I can remineralize that water and do a water change on all of those tanks. And that's pretty much my schedule. And then saltwater tank gets water change usually whenever, usually on the weekend sometime, whenever I'm get around to it. I haven't found a strict schedule for the salt water yet. So what I'm going to do now is basically I'm going to drain a gallon out of each tank, and what I do is I have this bucket here, and you can see there's like an X pattern in the bucket. See how there's like X's in the plastic? I've learned that each X is about a gallon of water. So not exactly on point, but for my needs it's accurate enough. So I'll drain 1 X worth of water from each tank, and then while this is closed, mind you, so that it's not auto topping off as I'm draining the water, and then I open this valve, let it fill up, close the valve, reconnect it to the auto top off system, open it up. Water change is done, nice and easy. So I'm gonna go ahead and drain a gallon of water from each of these, and then I'll show you the process. So the water has been removed from the tanks. Now, about a gallon from each tank was taken out. I left this tank and this tank alone because they're cycling and getting ready for new shrimpies. But the other tanks, I took a gallon out of each, and as you can see, there's not any water flowing because, like I said, we have the auto top off system turned off, so no water from the water change system can get into the auto top off system, and vice versa. So that is closed off, and right now all I have to do is once I flip that valve open, we should see water start flowing into all the tanks that I removed water from, because obviously this tank, you know, the float's up there, so no water's gonna come in. So open it, I can hear we got water started to flow there, but like it's what based on gravity. So let's go down here, and bam, we are filling. So tank is filling up. Tank is filling up. We are filling up with water over here, and they will fill, and once the bottom tanks fill, the top tanks will start filling, and it fills from the bottom up, and then it'll stop. So in a couple hours, all I got to do is come and flip this switch and flip this switch, and my water change is done. So once I drain all the water and have the water turned on refilling, this is shrimp related, but basically I come in here and I take some of this dead shrimp powder, which is an awesome name for it because it's just great for the shrimp, and I'll try to take like half of a spoon. Focus. It's not gonna focus, but half a spoon, and I just dump it in the water. Let it float in there, and the shrimp go crazy for this, and it really helps promote those green walls. So as you can see, like in my Taiwan bee tank, the walls are green with this kleb, and the babies and the shrimp just love it. You can see there's babies everywhere in this tank. Let's get a shot. Babies everywhere. Well, not really everywhere, but there's a lot of babies in this tank, and they love that green walls. So I throw a little bit of dead shrimp powder. It snows for a minute, and the shrimp love it. Love it, love it, love it. So I do that with every water change. Just add a little bit of that dead shrimp powder. The only hard work, the only manual work I had to do to change the water in potentially these 9 tanks all at once is to suck the water out. It's like a gallon of water out of each one. And as you can see, it didn't take long to suck a gallon out. It didn't take much effort. Just real easy. And that's the only manual hard part about it, because the roadie fills it up. Then all you got to do is add salt, wait to the next day, basically let it mix itself up and come to temperature, and then use it. Super easy way to do water changes. And then the auto top off, again, super easy since it's a gravity fed and above us. All I got to do is flip the switch, and flow valves take care of the rest. So now that you've seen how this system works with that, I can show you how I do a water change on these Caridina tanks with the pump. First thing I do is come over here, make sure this valve is closed so I don't get any water going from the pump anywhere before I connect it to where I want to connect it to. The next thing I do is I have the main line coming from these tanks. I'm gonna label these one day. I meant to do it the first day, and then it's been a lot of days, a lot of months, well, a lot of weeks, and I still haven't labeled them, but now I know where they are pretty much. But basically the line that comes from these tanks comes up here, and it's this black one right here. So I'm gonna close that line off, and now it is isolated from the auto top-off system. And since this one is not gravity fed, I actually have to disconnect this line, which I'm surprised I was able to do that easily one-handed. I thought that was gonna be a pain. But I basically disconnect that line, connect this line to this line. It's hard to do one-handed, guys. All right, and then I can open that up. And now the other end of this line is the pump in the room, which we're about to go to. But now the pump is connected to all these flow valves, and the auto top-off system is separate by itself. So that took 6 minutes and 7 seconds. And that's with two 20-gallon tanks on the bottom, which I had to take 2 gallons out instead of 1 gallon. And the siphon flow goes a lot slower on the bottom rack because gravity, you know, 1.81 meters per second, right? I think my physics memory's correct. Correct me in the comments. But anyways, yeah, not long. 6 minutes to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 water changes. Took 6 minutes of my time, probably, so we'll say under 10 minutes after flipping switches and hoses and turning pumps on and stuff. But, so tanks drained. On to the next section. So back over here, now that we're ready, here is the other side. And we will connect that to the pump over here, which if I pull the pump up, you can see it plugs, there's that hole in the pump. Actually, I'll just bring it out, make this easier to see. This plugs right into there, just like that. And then all of this goes back into the bucket. And remember, this bucket has been remineralized. I have it at 270 microsiemens, or approximately 100 TDS, and that's using B shrimp, salty shrimp mineral. So now that that is hooked up, all I have to do is plug this in. So we'll plug that in. It turns the pump on, and it pumps water to the tank. And back over here, so we just turned on the pump, water's coming in, going through here into this line, which we disconnected from the auto top-off system, coming down using the same lines, and it's connected to all these floats. So if we come in here, you can see we got water coming in, next tank, water coming in, next tank, water coming in. So it'll progressively go down the line, and as this tank fills up, it'll shut the valve and it'll fill up all down the line until they're all full, at which point I just need to go unplug the pump and then clear out the line, detach here, and reattach auto top off, open it up, and we're good for another week. So basically that's how I do water changes, and you know, I can do lots of water changes in like a half hour. I could pretty much do 10 to 15 minutes of manual labor, wait a few hours, do 2 or 3 minutes of labor, and water changes are done for basically this entire room, which is super nice. But that's it, guys. That's all we're gonna do for this one, guys. Roma Aquatics out.